All right, let's get into this one. Let's have fun with it because it should be interesting. Kriega Bundle. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Welcome to the library. I am Tennessee Fats, and today I can guarantee you we are talking 100% Conan. That's right. We are actually going back to the roots of the channel today, and we're actually doing a little bit of a interactive video on this one. You already saw the thumbnail back there. That's what brought you here. So before we get into too much else, let's talk about how we actually got to, well, what are we doing here? All right, so what brought us here? How did we get here? What are we doing? All of these important questions need to be answered. So let's go through them. You know what's really fun about this video is I think I'm using every single camera mount I own just to shoot this. This is a weird one, everybody. So let's talk about why we're here. What we're doing today is we're going to do a deep dive into one particular issue of Savage Sword of Conan. Now, I'm going to stop right here and give cred, and I mean mad cred. It's the person who actually came up with this idea, and that's you, Robin. I'm talking to you. Everybody, today we are doing what I'm going to call as a working title, the Savage Sword of Conan Challenge, otherwise known as the SSOC. Almost like sock it to you, but it's not really like that because it's actually spelled differently. What we're doing in the Savage Sword of Conan Challenge is something a little different. Robin reached out to me a while back, and he said, and Robin, for those of you who don't know, is one of the regular viewers here on this channel, and he actually has his own blog. And his blog is really good. If those of you who don't know what it is, I will put a link to it down there in the description just for the general blog. And I'm also going to put a second link down there, and we'll talk about that at the end of the video, okay? Robin reached out to me because he's a regular of the channel, and he said, hey, Tennessee Fats, wouldn't it be fun if we did this challenge where I said, hey, you go read a Savage Sword of Conan book that I'm telling you to read. I'll read one that you're telling me to read, and we'll come back at the end of the day, and we'll actually give our thoughts based on what the other person asked us to do. So I thought, this is kind of neat, because what it does is it forces other people in the community, once they've received this challenge, to actually go out and read a book that might be your favorite book, and then give you their objective opinion of it themselves. Kind of cool. And I like what Robin came up with here. So this is what we're doing. This is exactly it. So as a regular viewer of the channel and as a subscriber, absolutely, Robin, I'm 100% in on this. And I do want to support your blog because I think it's good stuff. So what is the book we're doing today? Well, let's get back over there and have a chat about that. All right, the SSOC. Here's the book that Robin gave to me, and he said, Tennessee Fats, go forth and read it. The book, I'm going to put the image up over here. This is Savage Sword of Conan number 45. It came out in October of 1979, and it's actually Roy Thomas's adaptation of an L. Sprague de Camp story, which is The Gem in the Tower. Now, that only takes up the front part of the book. There's actually a Red Sonja story in the back and some fun little tidbits in the middle. So we'll talk about each of these individually. So that's the book we're covering. Let's turn this thing around and go to the actual third camera holster that we got and take a look at what's in the book. Well, here we are. We've turned the camera back around and we are looking, I tell you, it's funny. We are going old school. I have not done a shot like this where we're looking down at a book in quite some time. So this is actually a lot of fun for me. So thanks, Robin, again for this suggestion. I hope you enjoy the book I sent. We'll chat about that later. All right, so here's the book in question. Bam. Savage Sword of Conan number 45. As I mentioned before, this is my copy, okay? As I mentioned before, this was in October of 1979. It's got a really cool cover. You know, it's funny. I've seen this cover recently a couple times on social media where people have shown this and saying, hey, this is the latest edition of my collection. And every time I saw it, I thought, wow, that is an awesome and epic cover. Look, it's got lightning striking the sword. Conan looks like he's a Viking. It's really cool. And a classic Viking pattern sail there. Also, you know, it's a Viking ship because, well, there's a dragon on front of it. Very cool. And it's quite the interesting. And of course, ghost Vikings in the background. You know, you got it all just sitting on the cover. Really cool cover. I'm not going to go too far into that, but let's get into the story here. As I mentioned, it's an adaptation of The Gem in the Tower, which again was an L. Sprague de Camp story. Now, I'll be very clear. This is the Tennessee Fats talking behind the camera here. I have never read the L. Sprague de Camp story. So reading the Roy Thomas version of this is the only version that I know. Kind of happy that I'm actually having a chance to do it. So let's pop this bad boy open. You start off with a beautiful frontispiece by Ernie Chan. Like this is one of the reasons why Ernie Chan ranks always as one of my favorite Conan artists of all time. John Buscema's great, don't get me wrong. Barry Windsor Smith, also fantastic. But Ernie Chan, there's something to his work. And for me, it just speaks to that's the guy. And for that reason, I always look at him as sort of like my prototypical and perfect Conan artist. Wonderful little intro here where you talk about a couple things that happen within this book. One of the ones that I think is kind of neat, and we'll only just briefly gloss over it, is the Conan quiz. Very cool. And then, of course, there is a Master of Shadows Red Sonja story in the back of this one. And I'm going to chat a little bit about that one, but that's not really the focus of today's video. Okay, so we're going to focus more on the gem and the tower. So Robin wanted me to read this and give my thoughts on it. And I'll tell you honestly, Robin did throw a couple comments to me and he said he thought this was the perfect sword and sorcery story. Now, we'll go through it page by page here. So spoiler alert, for those of you who don't want to see what happens in this, skip to the, or you probably actually shouldn't even be watching this video, okay? Just stop, just exit stage left, okay? It's probably the best for you to do if you don't want me to ruin this for you. Let's get into the story itself. The story is an interesting one, and you know what we should do? Before we even get into this, let's get into where the heck is this? It's right there. Okay, we're down to where the heck is this thing. It's even on this map here, I'll show you. It's around there, okay? Done. So the story opens with Conan landing on shore, and he's landing on shore of an island. We have a clear sense that he's landing on shore of an island. He seems to be either a senior officer in this Bracken pirate ship, or at least somebody of stature, because he's ordering other people what to do. Quite interesting, these are Zingaran pirates. These guys really know what they're doing, and here's Conan telling them what to do. Again, Roy Thomas wrote it, John Buscema, and Tony de Zuniga. Zuniga? I always get this name wrong. You know what? Somebody down in the comments down below, is it Zuniga? De Zuniga? I don't know. You guys type it out phonetically how you think I should pronounce that going forward. And it does a good job up here at the top of saying, listen, we're clearly an adaptation of this story. Quite cool. He's on the island, and you get a very quick sense very early on that they're on the island for a reason. They are there because the captain has heard about something. He's heard about a treasure. And this is the captain, Gonzago, who comes on shore. And this is Mina, who is a half Stygian sorcerer that's been brought along. And what's happened is they've heard a story about a gem in a tower that they want to get. Clearly, this is discussed here in the opening panels, but one of the things that sets the tone early is Mina hits shore. One of the first things he says is, I smell death. Actually, he does right there. I smell death in the wind. And Conan, being superstitious because he's a barbarian, he's not like the civilized guys who's just going to shut that to the side. He's like, whoa, 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 the sorcerer smells death. That's bad. And he starts to get a little bit more antsy. But again, he doesn't want to scare the other pirates. So the captain and Conan and Mina have a conversation. At the end of the day, they decide to say nothing. And off they wander. Conan's sort of thinking, well, there isn't really anything dangerous here. I mean, you got lazy snakes and some rodents looking at us from the rocks, but we seem to be all right, so let's just move along. And as they meander their way through the island, they end up making their way to the tower of Siptah. Siptah being a Stygian wizard who set up this tower. And he's been using this tower as his base of operations, where he has this gem, the gem in the tower, or the gem of Siptah, I think is somewhere references that. And he's been using this basically to, what would we call this? Demand protection money, run basically a racket off of the island where those people who pay him get safe passage, clear storms, what have you. Those who don't, well, storms, tentacles, bad things happen. But nobody's heard from him for a couple months. So the rumors run around that, well, maybe he's dead. And given how much graft he's been taking off everybody, maybe we should go steal all of his crap. And Gonzago over here is like, yeah, we should. Well, let's go. And he grabs the guys because he's a captain, and off he goes. Brings along Mina because, you know, when you're going to deal with a sorcerer, it's a good idea to take a sorcerer with you. And they say, well, there's the tower. How about we cast some sort of spell of invisibility so we can get close to it without being detected? And Mina starts casting a spell. Says, okay, everybody back off. I got to do this, and you can't be around. I really got to focus. And they suddenly hear him scream. And they come back and find that his throat has been slashed. And Conan's like, well, okay, that means that either Siptah is still alive, or at least the monster that's guarding the tower is still alive. That's a bad thing. And everybody says, okay, well, you know what? Let's just make a ladder. We'll wait until nightfall. We'll head over to the tower and check it out. And then they get there and check this out. Look how tiny they are as compared to the tower. It's like, I don't think the ladder's going to do the job, guys. Yeah, so they head back and they give up on the first hack and say, we're probably not going to make it. So they meander on back into the woods and they're thinking about, well, what are we going to do here? The captain is off sort of brooding by himself and he's in a foul mood. He's a really good captain, though. And you really get a sense here that the men respect him, but at the same time, the men fear him. Him brooding means everybody shut the F up. Just let me, brood and get through what I got to here. And Conan eventually falls asleep. Here he is sleeping. Sword ready to go just in case. And he starts dreaming. And when he's in his dream, he starts dreaming of the campfire where the other pirates are sitting with their swords also ready to go. And there's the captain by his fire by himself. And suddenly this thing comes lurching out of the forest and does a wonderful job of describing his eyes coming out of the darkness until perfectly silently he swoons upon the captain. And the captain from behind has no sense. Captain Conan's trying to yell in his dream to warn him, but nothing can come out because he's having a dream. And he suddenly awakes to this. And he's like, oh, that's not good. And the captain Conan jumps up, says, Captain, look out. The other men wake up because, they've heard the shriek as well. And they all go running over to the captain thinking that he's asleep because he's still hunched over, and they find that, oh, he's dead, and oh, his throat's been slashed as well. Conan says, okay, we're going to double the guard. Clearly something is still guarding the actual gem here in the tower. Everybody double up on this and send some men back. We're going to get some food, and we're going to hang out here and see how we're going to do. The night goes on, and bad things happen. Now, I imagine, I could be wrong, I imagine this particular nighttime scene here in the novel was probably pretty epic. In the comic, it's somewhat abridged. It's somewhat shortened, Basically, they set up guards. Some of the guys who are sent off to get food come back. They come back and they're attacked, and suddenly all the sentries are dead. Like, people are getting slaughtered here in the darkness. And were I writing the novel, this is where I would spend some time really building up the theme in the darkness. But the comic has to do it in an abridged way because we only have so many pages. And that's really what happens here. Anyways, bottom line is Conan says, okay, guys, here's what we're going to do. I'm glad we're all back. We're going to smoke the devil out. Get to chapter 2. Well, they've spent all night ripping down trees, tearing out trunks, and basically building a fire berm around the base of the tower. That's about the height of a man. And they said, let's burn it. Set up some archers around the outside so if anything comes out, we can shoot it. Let's burn this thing to the ground, or at least at a bare minimum, smoke them out. Well, it does burn, and smoke gets into the cracks in the tower and starts heading its way up. The tower basically acting like, almost like an updraft, like a chimney. Anybody see that movie Updraft? That's an oldie. Quite a good one. Anyways, fire's going up, smoke comes up, and monster comes out. And guess what? Conan was right. He is in there. He's in that tower. And he says, screw you guys. You're smoking out my tower. I'm going to kill you. Comes for the attack. Arrows are flying around, and apparently nothing lands true. And this thing hits the ground and just starts slaughtering people. Conan tries to bash it with his sword and leaves nothing but a scratch on his head, and his sword breaks. Conan falls back. There's a pretty epic battle. But the other pirates, not being cowards and not leaving Conan to do all the fighting themselves, or himself, come diving in. There's an epic battle going on, and the Birdman, this monster, this demon, tries to fly back. Conan's not taking that crap. Grabs the knife and says, no, we're ending this now. Grabs onto it and climbs on, basically choking it out while the thing continues to fly. And it flies away, recognizing it probably can't win on the ground, surrounded by all these pirates. And Conan's also recognizing, I can't let you go because you're just going to keep coming back and picking us off one at a time. And I want that gem. Or I at least want to kill you. One or the other. Conan makes his way all the way back to the tower because that's where the beast decides to go when it retreats. And when it gets up there, nobody can really get a good shot at it, but it's about to attack. And when it does attack, Conan's separated from it. And this is where Conan gets an opportunity. One of the archers below shoots it. Actually gets a clear shot, hits it. The guy's name, where is he over here? Tono. Tono apparently is the guy that shoots him. Well done, Tono. It's a good shot from all the way down. Look at how straight that is. There's no arc to that. That must have been one hell of a draw strength on that bow. Anyways, hits the thing. The thing's got an arrow through its shoulder, and it's still willing to attack, but it's also showing it's not really feeling pain. Conan recognizes, okay, I'm bleeding out here from all my scratches. I got to do this quick. So when it dives, he dives, plunges the sword directly into his chest, thinking, okay, I'm going to assume you're dead. And it falls forward, Conan assuming it's dead. He wanders into the tower because, bear in mind, at this point in time, we don't know if Siptah is dead or not. Well, guess what? He is. And he's left down there as a corpse, basically just mummified. There's no smell of putrefaction or anything in the room when he gets down to this room that's below the top tier. But clearly this guy is dead, and the stone is sitting on him. And he's thinking, oh, he's dead. Well, there you go. I guess I'll just grab this. And this thing comes out of nowhere again. This battle drags on. And what I like about this is you've got this supernatural creature that Conan has already thought he's killed, like it's dead. Unless this is a new one, but clearly it's the same one. It's got an arrow through its shoulder, and it's still got the actual dagger sitting through its chest. But it died, and now it's coming back. Conan's like, okay, well, the steel couldn't do it. How about we'll see if the furniture can? And bashes this little throne thing that had a book on it over the thing's skull. And you really get a sense that this bash has crushed its skull. The thing falls, it's clawing at the ground, but it still gets up. This thing is not dying. Conan's throwing his best at it and nothing's happening. Well, he runs back and the only place that's left is this circular room that Chip ties in. And all that's left is this gem. And he's like, you're still coming at me. Dear God. So what have I got? Nothing left but a gem, so it better be good. And he throws it. I guess his idea was that he was going to, beam the thing and, I don't know, maybe then go for hand to hand. Thing steps out of the way. Even this wounded steps out of the way and the stone smashes behind it and it instantly dies. And this is really cool. This is almost like, what's the story I'm thinking about here? Was it, Phoenix on the Sword. This is like Phoenix on the Sword. And it's that way for a reason, because this thing, as soon as the magic is broken, it starts rotting. And I don't mean rotting in a little way. I mean that's decomposing, rotting. And Conan describes it as thousands of years of aging suddenly hit it. The skin just oozes off, goes to bone. Bone turns to dust. Nothing's left but the outline of the dust and the dagger and the actual arrow that hit him. Pretty cool. Very cool idea and very neat. I like the way they did this. Very, as I say, reminiscent of that Phoenix on the Sword, where the monster dies and Conan says, oh no, it's over there. And, and I killed it and nobody believes him. And it's only when they go over and look at the mark on the ground that they recognize, holy crap, Conan was right. Because that thing also dissolved, but he was a king on that. But anyway, he looks back down to the guys and says, hey, great job, everybody. Thumbs up all around. Woo, way to, woo. That's the thumbs up, everybody celebrating. He finds one chest, lowers it down with them and says, unfortunately, guys, this is all we got. I'm sure there's more out here and we could dig for 10,000 years and we'll probably never find it, but this is what we got and it's all that's good for us today. They bring the first mate, the actual first mate, on shore. He comes back and they recognizes Conan as captain, and Conan basically ends the whole thing with a joke saying, hey, you know what, if anybody wakes me up before I get my fill of sleep, I will literally make them wish that bat thing killed them. And that's the end of the story. It's actually a pretty short one. And it's interesting because here you've got only really one half of the actual issue of Savage Sword being used by this comic adaptation. As I mentioned, I think what they really do is they abridged a lot of that whole nighttime combat and possibly the dream sequence to really cut this thing down in pages to get it where it is. Now, I will say this, Robin. This does, in fact, have everything you need for sword and sorcery. Now, I'm going to get to that when I do my wrap-up at the end, but right now, I'm giving you the double thumbs up on this one. Let's continue going through the issue, though, because this isn't just an issue of, hey, let's go through the one Conan story. We're going through the Savage Sword of Conan challenge. That's the magazine. Well, this is pretty cool. Here you go. You're basically told that the very next story that's going to be coming out is another Thomas adaptation of a Elsbreg de Camp story, which is fairly cool, and we'll get to that later. This was kind of neat. It was an essay that talks about slavery in the Hyborian age. And what I like about this, and I'm going to skip forward here. Actually, I won't skip forward too far. What you do is you see these annotations here, like CR, HN, CA. What I like about this particular essay is that when you get to the end of it, because it's talking basically about slavery in all of the kingdoms, it actually gives you the abbreviation key here of where all the sources were. Oh, that came from, Robert E. Howard writing this story. That came from like Black Colossus, for example, Jewels of Gualhur. All these sort of Robert E. Howard stories are clearly referenced. So this isn't just them making up garbage. This is literally their interpretation of all the hints. I always talk about those little strings that Robert E. Howard leaves in his stories. They got it. And it's funny because they were actually able to build a pyramid, a hierarchy of people. Not a hierarchy of needs, that's different. A hierarchy of how people live in the Hyborian age. Pretty cool. Now this was fun. And I tell you, I actually read this book, this comic, years and years and years ago, but I completely forgot it. And when Robin and I were first chatting about this one, I was like, I'm sure I read this at some point in time, but I couldn't really figure it out. And I read the whole Jewel in the Tower story, and I was like, okay, this is slightly ringing a bell. This was the part that now I remember it. I totally remember this. I tried this years ago when I first read this book. I sucked. My score was horrible. I would actually like to see it. I'm going to throw this out here right now. Titan Comics, you guys, you're out there, Titan. That's me pointing at you. I would like to see something like this popping up in some Savage Sword going forward, please. This Conan quiz, it's nothing that has to be scored. It's not a contest. It's nothing. It's just a self-scoring, a self-test of do you know what you're talking about? Do you recognize these things? And if you don't know them, it gives you a hint to go back. Because at the back of this, there's the answer quiz. Hold on, we gotta stop cheating. The answer key is there. So you actually have the answers to all those questions. Like there was an interesting one that was, I think it was question number 2, that said, listen, who are the what sorcerer, name the sorcerer that has the following as the source of their power. And there's 5 of them. It lists off these random things. That's pretty cool. One of them being a serpent ring. I think we all know who that one was, but that was very cool. That's kind of neat. All right, last thing that showed up in this particular issue of Savage Sword that we'll talk about today. Master of Shadows. This is a Red Sonja story. This is not a Robert E. Howard story, although we always say that it is based on a heroine created by Robert E. Howard. This is a fairly cool story, and it's one of these one-off stories, and you know, I think Red Sonja, as far as Marvel goes, doesn't really get her due a lot with regards to her standalone stuff. And the reason why I say that is because most of the time, her standalone stuff was written in such a way where it was just, okay, here's the one-off story and it's gone. There's no real consequence to it. And there's no real ramifications or long-lasting effects. This is a story that does have some level of lasting effects to it. At the same time, it does come off as somewhat, like, non-consequential. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean that's what Red Sonja stories in Marvel typically were. The story is basically a story of Red Sonja basically just trying to lounge and have a good time. And 3 doofuses come along and decide to give her a hard time. And by hard time, I mean their intentions were entirely bad. Sonja's not putting up with that crap and literally just beats the living tar out of them. I believe she kills one of them right off the bat. Yeah, I think she does. And this leads to a whole tale of revenge wherein the other brothers are coming to get him, but there's an assassin society in town. The one brother that's left is actually the head of this assassin society. And I don't want to spoil this one for you. At the end of the day, the whole thing comes down to it's an issue of shadows, and she has to survive in the shadows. But at the end of the day, she's right back lounging on the exact same thing because that's all she wanted in the first place. And that's what I mean by sort of non-consequential. The stuff that happens in the middle of that story, quite interesting. Interesting intellectual dialogue in that, and it's kind of fun. Now, I'll tell you, here's, let me, hold on. Just put that aside over here. Let's see. Oh, what do you got there, Tennessee Fats? Oh, it's the Red Sonja Omnibus. Yeah. Anybody want to see what that story looks like in color? Oh, yeah. Now, I know this omnibus got a lot of hot water for the coloration and for the way it was done. And I get it. I totally get it. You want to see stuff in black and white, but this is kind of a cool juxtaposition when you're taking that Red Sonja story and then you're turning around and you're throwing color on top of it. There's something to it. I don't know what it is, but it just makes like, here, look at that. 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 Granted, Savage Sword is bigger. My one complaint about this Red Sonja Omnibus is that it's too darn small. I don't like the way that they shrunk everything down. It should have been like giant size like from Savage Sword. But I think the color in this was kind of neat. And you know what, for a story that was a lot about shadows and darkness, like Master of Shadows, trust me, it did add a lot when you got to those later pages. Anyway, I just thought I would throw that in there for you guys who don't know. That is actually in the Red Sonja Omnibus. My 2 cents. All right, let's get back to the wrap up here and let's talk about what I think overall of this particular issue of Savage Sword. All right, let's wrap this bad boy up and let's give our closing thoughts on what we think of this particular issue of Savage Sword and what do I think was done really, really well in here. I gotta tell you, this was a very cool book. As a single issue of Savage Sword of Conan, I thought this thing did a really good job. Now, I think a piece of that was the fact that Roy Thomas probably had a very strong novel to build off of when he was writing what is this very abridged version of The Gem in the Tower. I'm sure there was a lot more detail to this in the novel, but as I mentioned earlier, I've never read the novel, so I couldn't really tell you. But it's a really cool story. Now, what's cool about this, let's talk about the Savage Sword, and let's talk about the sword and sorcery particular component of this. Did this have the sword of sword and sorcery? Yes, by gar, it did. I tell you, you had a lot of literal sword fighting and attacking of this particular monster thing. That sword scene where Conan is cleaving down, and the sword just goes and breaks into like, I think it's 3 pieces. I was going to say 1,000, but it's actually 3. And you have a description of a tiny scratch on the thing's head. That's sword. That's really sword. And when you see it attacking and the pirates attacking it in this battle scene, well, you clearly have a sense of the sword. You also have the adventuring component to this. Conan is a member of a pirate crew. The pirate crew has heard that there's a treasure out there, and this is like a good old-fashioned dungeon crawl. It's like, oh, there's a treasure? Let's go sack that dungeon and get that treasure. Like, this is what this actually draws out to. The story is exactly that. It's like the Italian Job without Mini Coopers. It's really, really well done. It's a nice piece of a D&D sword and sorcery story. Let's talk sorcery. Is there sorcery? Yes, there absolutely is. Now, you don't have the sorcery at the level of, I believe I referred to the Phoenix on the Sword when we were going through page by page. You don't have that where Conan has the dream and he finds that he's met by this individual, we won't name him here, and he gets an etching on his sword, and that because there's an etching on the sword, that's what actually ends up killing the beast. But you do have a monster just being destroyed in a similar way. The spell that created this is dissipated. One of the things that I didn't talk to when we went through this thing page by page was Conan actually thinking about it afterwards and intelligently saying, geez, you know, I wonder if that thing was actually not a monster, but some prior age person or entity that he brought back to life, which is why when the spell was dissipated, it aged so quickly. Like, you have Conan doing that thought process, and you have this sorcery piece of it where basically one of these Batmen has been brought back. Now, that's very cool. If you know a lot of the history about the men that came before men, and I say men that came before men, how would I describe this better? Well, if you know the stories of the entities that lived on the earth before the time of men, and I think this comes out perfectly when you read the original Kull Shadow Kingdom story, you find out about the Batmen, the Snake Men. There was the horse monster guys. There's a bunch of those guys out there. There was the Wolfmen, for example, that Kull ran into later, one of the last surviving members of the Wolfmen. And there's this wonderful battle and then a reconciliation between the two. So there are creatures that existed before men. Possibly this Batman, not Batman, Batman is one of those. And I thought that was really cool because it's not just, okay, I've got the sorcery of possibly I brought something back to life, but you have it building on a piece of history. And again, maybe El Sprague de Camp actually built on that more in the novel, where you have a creature that's brought out of time to the present, either through death and reincarnation or literally being sucked through time, which also would have been deeply, deeply cool. This one does have everything you need for sword and sorcery. The other extras that come in the book, well, there was that really cool essay about slavery in the time of the Hyborian Age and how each kingdom treated slavery different. That was all referenced back to Robert E. Howard's original works. That is a good piece of work. That was well done. That interesting twist in there where you have the Conan quiz, which is just a fun exercise that I could just picture like teenagers back then sitting there going, okay, like the old pencil here. Thulsa Doom. No, wait. That's a Kull guy. Thuzan Thun. No, wait. That's a Kull guy. I could just picture that happening back then. It's interesting, the copy I have actually hasn't been filled in. I would imagine a fair number of copies out there have actually been filled in and answered. Kind of a cool thing. I'd actually like to see Titan throw something like that into the newer issues of Savage Sword. Note me going closer, as I said. I'm hinting. That's a subtle hint, by the way. And then you have the Red Sonja story at the back. Red Sonja stories being exactly what they were at Marvel in the 1970s. Some of them were very good. Some of them were not so good. There's some artists that was really doing a great job on it, and there are some artists that really drew it out. And I gotta tell you, this was a good one, and I do like this one. And honestly, if you want to really get a sense of the darkness of this story, and you do own the omnibus, the Red Sonja omnibus, it's a great way to get more of it because that coloration in the back, or colorization, that happened in it, when you get later in the story, really shows the shadows, which you don't, well, you see it, but I don't know. To me, it just didn't, it doesn't jump at you the way it does in the colorized version. There you go. Listen, when I'm watching movies, I prefer to watch the original black and whites. I don't prefer to watch the colorization if there has been one that's been done in Technicolor or... But this one, I actually think there is an added twist to it. So that's what we think of this book. It is actually a very good sword and sorcery issue of Savage Sword of Conan. So, Robin, thank you very much for suggesting that I go through this one. I really enjoyed this. Let's get to some wrap up and further thoughts. All right, let's talk about next steps and what I would really like to see going forward on this one. Now, I tell you, I already did my conclusion, and that's in the last sequence there where I talked about how this was a really cool issue. Now, let's take a look at what actually happened here. This is an issue that I read years ago. I had no running memory of what happened in this book at all. In fact, when I read The Gem in the Tower, which was the first story in this particular copy, I had nothing. There wasn't anything triggering going, oh yeah, I remember this. There were little snippets, you know, that odd feeling, that thing that it's almost like somebody pulling a thread in the back of your brain. It's like, no, you remember this. Pythagorean theory of Tennessee Fats. You remember this. It's one of those things, right? And this really sat there and didn't jump, though. It wasn't until I got to that quiz section where I went, oh, I remember this. I remember doing these back in the day. Where I went, yeah, and it brought back, yeah, there it is. But what it really did was it took a book that I had some appreciation of, and it made me step forward to the point where I have a much greater appreciation of it for now. I've read it recently, so now it's sitting in my mind, and I have enjoyed this, and it was really good. Here's what I want to see going forward from you guys. Other members of the community. That means you guys out there watching this video right now. I'm not the only guy out there that's talking about the Hyborian Age and Conan the Barbarian and Robert E. Howard and all this other stuff. There are a lot more of you out there that can actually go through this stuff and actually go through this exercise. And I mean exercise in a positive way. Go out there, find somebody that you know that actually likes Savage Sword of Conan. You don't have to record a video for this. Find somebody else that likes what you like in your community and trade them. Take your book, give it to them. Have them take a book and have them give it to you. Take books that the two of you have enjoyed and have the other person read it. Share the gift of Savage Sword, the wonderful sword and sorcery stories that came out with other members of the community. If you want to turn around and make this something that's more public, you want to throw it on YouTube or social media, whatever you want to do, feel free. But I'm going to throw full credit on this one back to Robin right now. This was Robin's idea, and it was a really good one. Now, here's what I want you all to do next, okay? Go check out his side of this Savage Sword of Conan challenge, the SSOC. Go check it out. The second link that I put down in the description that I told you guys was there and I would talk about later in the video, this is the part now. Click on the link and go take a read. I'm not going to tell you which particular book I asked him to read. I'm not. You want to know, go check it out. You know what? If I can, I'll even take the link and I'll type it and I'll stick it in the bottom of the email right now. Not the email. The video right now. And you can go ahead and take a screenshot and you can type it out later, but check it out. His stuff is good. It's quite funny. He writes the way that we speak, which is really cool and refreshing, and I honestly really enjoy it. Lots of Hyborian Age topics on that blog, so check it out. And again, check out that particular Savage Sword of Conan challenge that he's taken on as the other side of this. Everybody, I hope you enjoyed this video. I do hope you guys will take Robin's suggestion seriously, and I hope more of you will pick this one up and actually go further on this exercise. Stick it in Reddit, stick it on Insta, stick it whatever you want. You're part of the Hyborian Age community. Get out there and enjoy it. Everybody, I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll see you in the next one.